Morning, everyone. As Becky said, I'm Emma, and it's my privilege this morning to bring the next message in the series on Nehemiah, so how to build like Nehemiah. So we're going to be focusing this morning in Nehemiah 3. But just before we do that, I just want to do a bit of a recap of what's happened so far, just so that we know where we're picking it up from. So in week 1, Dave introduced the series, and he talked about God placing something on our heart. So Nehemiah had this burden placed on his heart, and Dave kind of encouraged us to think about how the actions of tomorrow, what we do tomorrow, begins with the burden that's placed on us today, and he explored that. And then last week, Colin continued on, and it was a bit about, what do we do with the burden? So what did Nehemiah do? So he prayed, spent a lot of time praying, and then he looked for the opportunity to speak to the king that he was a cupbearer for, to kind of share what was on his heart. And as a result of that, Nehemiah set off towards the walls of Jerusalem at that point. And I suppose, as I was preparing for this, I was thinking that first step was, God planting that seed and that thought and that burden. And then the next step was him then, or in Colin's week, it was then about, what do you do with that? Well, he spent time praying, he looked for an opportunity to speak to the king. And then this morning, I want to kind of elaborate on the fact that he then begins to take action. So Nehemiah 3 is where we see the walls begin to be rebuilt. So that burden that had been placed in Nehemiah turns into an action. And I sometimes think that taking action is sometimes the trickiest bit. Because actually for Nehemiah, there could have been lots of things that stopped him getting to that point. He was really quite far away. And he had quite a nice life, I would imagine, living with the king, a good position. But because God had placed that in his heart, he felt moved to action, and I want to explore that a little bit this morning as well. So we kind of pick up Nehemiah at the point where he's arrived at the walls, he has toured around the walls, he's seen the destruction and the mess, and he spent some time praying. And we're going to pick up at the start of Nehemiah 3, and I'm going to be honest, I am not reading the full thing, because I tried to read the full thing. There's a lot of names in there that are really hard to pronounce, and I actually said to Dave and the team when we met, I said, there's a lot of big names, and Dave's advice was say them quickly and confidently, nobody will know. However, even saying them confidently and quickly, I was like, no, people are just going to be lost in what I'm saying. So I'm going to read the first couple of verses, and then we're going to pick up a few wee bits as we go, okay? Just to give you a flavour of what the chapter is about. So if we start at Nehemiah 3, right at the start. Elisha, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the Hundred, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zaccur, son of Imri, built next to them. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hathaniah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Meremoth, son of Uri, the son of Kazok, repaired the next section. And next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the son of Mishael, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, son of Bana, also made repairs. So you can see, hopefully, what I mean with the names. So it was going to be quite a long list of lots of repairs being made. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up a few wee sections as we go through this next couple of verses, and then there's a couple of things highlighted here that I'm going to try and focus in a little bit on. So the list continues. We see names continue to be mentioned, and it tells us the different parts of the wall that they had built. So we've got perfume makers, and we've got goldsmiths involved, so it's telling us a bit about their occupations. We've also got lots about the families. We've got he's the son of someone, and he's the son of someone else, and we also have a daughters in there as well. It tells us about the different gates that were built. So in addition to the wall, there was gates. So we have the valley gate, we've got the dung gate, we've got the fountain gate, and it's kind of taken us round. It was actually really fascinating to look. I don't have a map of it up here just now, but it was really interesting. I watched a few YouTube videos, and it took you around and showed you how it all came together, and it was really quite fascinating. So the list continues on, but there was a few things that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to share this morning. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am an English teacher by trade, so I quite like picking language apart. It's what I do. So there's repetition in there. And for anyone out there that's doing their Nat 5 higher English, you will know repetition is something that you can comment on. And that's because if a point is emphasised, it's repeated. Okay, so it's important, that's why it's there. So we've got a few phrases in here that I want to explore this morning. We've got the fact that it keeps referring to repairs. Now we know that the walls at this point had been down for about 140, 150 years, and it keeps going back to they repaired it. It also talks a lot about and next to him, and next to him, and next to him. And we've also dotted throughout the chapter, we've also got this idea and this reference to the people were working on the part of the wall that was in front of their house. And just before we jump into that, I felt like I didn't want to do a disservice to anyone, so I put together a list of all of the names. I don't know if you can get that bit, Eva, they go on and on. There's a few slides of the different names of people who were mentioned, because I thought they're mentioned in the Bible, and just because I can't pronounce them doesn't mean that we shouldn't acknowledge the part that they obviously played in this. And there's individuals and family names, but there's also groups of people mentioned as well. So we've got priests, we've got men from different areas, and then again it makes reference to different jobs that people have too. So many people involved in this, and I just want to, highlight the fact that this all started with the burden that had been put on Nehemiah to take action. And now we have all of these people who are fulfilling what God had planned. But as I began to think about it, I thought God didn't just burden Nehemiah, he actually burdened all of those people who were involved as well. And I think sometimes when we have something that we're kind of struggling with, or God's placed something on us, we kind of can sometimes feel like we're a bit alone. You know, all the responsibility of this is lying on me. And maybe Nehemiah felt a bit like that, but actually God had been preparing, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain that lots of these people were also doing the same as Nehemiah. They were also praying, and they were also looking for an opportunity, and what they really needed was somebody to take the lead, and that was the burden placed on Nehemiah. So, as I said, he arrived, he had gone round the walls, it was all a bit of a mess. In fact, it says at one point he can't actually get through because it's such a mess and he needs to go up to higher ground to look and survey what is down around them. And it just got me thinking, this word, repair, he repaired it, that sometimes situations can just look a bit of a mess. You might be someone that's really good with their hands, and you'd think, oh, I'll take on any task, but for me, I just think if that was me and I was looking at that, sometimes you just think, like, where do you start with this? And I don't know if you ever experienced that with situations, you just think, this is a total mess. How am I ever going to kind of fix this? And I think it's important to point out as well that the walls all being destroyed and lying in bits, yes, it had been physically destroyed, but also it represented more than that to these people. It represented a loss of their identity, maybe a bit of embarrassment and a bit of shame. And I think something that we can all kind of understand. But I think the important point is that these people didn't look at it and think, oh, where do I start? They got on board and they started to make change. And they started to put it back together. And I just felt like as they were building those walls, like they were also like restoring themselves as well. Like they were getting alongside each other. And things that looked like just couldn't be fixed, they managed to put that back together. And actually, in the end, the walls ended up stronger than they had been before. So I wasn't going to include this section, and I kept being drawn to that word, repair. And you can see up here what it means. So repair means to restore something, to make good, to put something right, and to renew what was broken. And I just wanted to encourage you this morning that we have a God who repairs. And God restores and he renews what was broken. and he puts things right and makes things good. So I don't know if that's relevant to anyone this morning, but if you're feeling like this is a bit of a mess, whatever you're in, and I don't know where to start, take it to God. Like Nehemiah, take it to God and look for that opportunity to take action. In addition to that, I also thought about the world that we live in. Like, there's just so many things that are broken in our communities, in the world as a whole. I'm not going to go all political here, but there's just so many things happening in the world that you just can't quite understand. And I think that I'm going to talk a little bit about us looking at our community and like the circle around us this morning, but I think there is also a call for us to speak into and to pray about these situations that are going on in the world too, because, you know, God cares and God wants to make these things right. The next phrase that I wanted to move on and talk a little bit about was this phrase, next to him. And it says up there, build with the people around you. So there's a bit of strategy here going on. You know, it's not like one person finishes a section and then the next person starts. Actually, all of this building's going on at the same time. Next to him, there was this family. Next to him, this next set of people. They were building. And what's really important for the people and also for us is to have a common purpose and a vision. So it just made me think, like, what is our vision? What is our vision as a church? What is your vision for your family? Because we have to have that vision. We have to have that common purpose with the people around us to create change. These people wanted the same thing. They wanted security. They wanted somewhere that they could worship. And that is what motivated them to keep going. I also think they were all beside each other, because sometimes the people you're alongside, in fact, always the people that you're alongside are the people who influence you. And as you will know, being an influencer is actually a full-time job now. Like, you get people who are just influencers. Like, their job is just to influence you, usually into buying things. And I'll not comment on whether I'm influenced by that or not. But we have a world where people are always trying to influence us. But whether or not, I don't know if we have any influencers in here, but whether or not you're an official full-time influencer or not, you are an influencer in the lives of the people who are around you. So the people who are beside you, you are an influencer. So what does that mean? So that means that, well, they're looking to you. Influence is actually defined as the ability to inspire, to guide, and to motivate others to achieve. So these people are all next to each other. You too are surrounded by people. And I just want to challenge you this morning to think, like, what kind of influencer are you? But also, how influenced are you too? Do we surround ourselves with people who have the same vision as us? I've got a slide up here, and hopefully you can see that little image. So we've got a single match. You might have heard of this before. And then you've got like a stack of matches. And if you are on your own as one individual single match, like, yes, you will burn and you will make a difference, but how much stronger and how much more powerful are you when you're working with those people who are alongside you? So, who are we influencing, and what are we influencing them for? We're influencers in our workplaces, in our schools, in our homes, with our families. And I am incredibly thankful for the influencers that I've had in my life that have helped to shape me into who I am. And I know that that will be the same for many of you. And I just want to encourage you to remember that you're an influencer, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in life we're just getting through. But be an influencer. Just like Nehemiah influenced all of these people, and then they all influenced each other, and they all went for that same mission, and that same vision, then I just want to encourage you to do the same. The lovely thing about this chapter is that everybody plays a part. There's no kind of exceptions. It's quite diverse, the number of people who are involved in rebuilding the wall. So we're just going to jump in at verse 8. Again, no judgment, please. So verse 8 says, Uzziel, son of Harakai, one of the goldsmiths, repaired the next section, and Hananiah, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to that. They restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Raphaiah, son of Hur, ruler of the half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section. Adjoining this, Jediah, son of Harhumph, made repairs opposite his house, and Hattush, son of Hashabmaiah, made repairs next to him. Malajag, son of Haram, and Hasub, son of Pathamoab, prepared another section, and the Tower of the Ovens. Shalom, son of Halohesh, ruler of the half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section with the help of his daughters. So lots of different people mentioned throughout this section. So we've got the goldsmiths, we have got the perfume makers, we've got rulers of the district, we've got sons, we've got daughters, and right at the start of the chapter we also had the high priests, or the high priest and his fellow priests too. And it made me think about the fact that, there was nobody that was exempt from being able to help and to contribute. And I sometimes think that when we're talking about this burden that's been given to us, something, and the word burden, just something placed in your heart, but actually it's a total blessing to have that burden placed in your heart and to be moved to action, like all of these people were. Because they could have viewed it as, I don't really have the skills to get involved in this. Like, I'm a goldsmith or I'm a perfume maker. Like, I can't build the wall. And how many times in life do we just eliminate ourselves from the running? Have you ever felt like God's asked you to do something and you've just thought, that's not for me? Like, there must be somebody better that can do that than me. I'm the wrong person. I have not been a Christian for long enough, or I'm too old, or I'm too young. But actually what we see here is that everybody felt like they had a part to play. I don't know if any of you have seen that meme or experienced this in life, but something happens and you sort of glance around looking for an adult to deal with it, and then the older you get, the more you realise you are the adult that needs to deal with it. It's a bit like that. It's a bit like, well, actually there's somebody better than me, and there's lots of other examples in the Bible of other people who think, actually, there's other people that are better than me for this. And one that sort of jumped out as I was preparing was I was thinking about like Moses, when he's been sent to speak on behalf of the Israelites to free them from Egypt. And he says, like, I can't even speak. Like, I don't want to do this, almost. He's like, there must be somebody else. Like, please just send somebody else. And we know that at that point, God then puts his brother alongside him, and the two of them go. And it just got me thinking about, let's not exclude ourselves from what God is asking us to do. Let's look at the opportunities that we get as a total blessing to be able to contribute to the work that God is doing, just like all of these people must have felt. I'm not saying all of these people were lugging big rocks about or, don't know, like mixing cement. I don't know what else you do to build a wall. But I'm sure there were lots of different roles to be played, and I feel like the church is like that. There's so many different roles to be fulfilled. Don't eliminate yourself and think someone else can do it if you're the person that's been called to do it, because God doesn't ask for perfection. He just asks for us to be willing. And just like he does in this story, these people are able to fulfill what God has asked for them. So please, I encourage you, don't miss out on the blessing. Think of these people who've had all these different jobs standing there when that wall is built and feeling like I was part of that. Like I took action there. I'd done what I was meant to do. And there's a phrase in church that I don't actually know where it came from, but it's been around for a long time. And it's that God doesn't call the qualified, but he qualifies the called. So if you're called to do something, then you need to believe that God is going to give you what you need to carry that through. So let's not eliminate ourselves. Let's actually look at the opportunities that we get, even though sometimes it can be quite tricky, to actually be part and be a blessing and gain so much from that experience, because all of the experiences we go through teach us so that we're ready to do the next thing that God has waiting for us. So, on to the last point, which is a bit about God is asking you this morning to start where you are, just like these people at the wall. It says in this last, that right at the end of the chapter, starting at chapter 28, I was going to read it, but I'm not. It is going to come up on the screen, though, over a couple of slides. So you can see that the building's continuing, and then we've got each in front of his own house, and then again, each in front of his own house, and there's a few slides that evidence the fact that people were focusing and building that wall right where they were. And there's a few reasons for this, I think. One of them being that if you're building a wall for protection right in front of your house, you want to make sure it's a good wall, don't you? You want to make sure like that is a strong wall. So God is asking us to just start where we are, to invest in the things that are around us and to make the most of these opportunities that we are given to share his love for the people who are around us. So, although each person was dealing with the part right in front of their wall, a bit like the kingdom of God, you're doing your little bit, but actually it's part of something much bigger. And how exciting is that? And how much of a pleasure is it to be part of that? So small, consistent acts of obedience actually contribute, and that's what leads to this wall being restored. And I've put a wee image up there. I don't know if you can see it at the bottom, but it's a wee little stack of dominoes. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking these small acts that we make, or that God gives to us, that he's like, I need you to do this, and we're obedient and we do it, is that sometimes you could be that little blue counter at the front and you don't actually know what the consequence of that is. Because sometimes you don't see it, sometimes you do. You get to see the wall at the end, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just get to see that bit that you've contributed. And I just wanted to share a little example from my own life where I don't know the outcome of this situation, but I felt like Nehemiah, I had this burden, and it was actually to do with school. So it was quite a lot of years ago now. I worked in my previous school. I was doing the job of a pupil sport teacher or a guidance teacher, and you have to go through and do young people's options. So they come to you and they say they want to do these things that you're like, no, what do you want to do when you leave school? Because you don't need any of these things you're picking. And it was this boy, and he came down and we were picking his options, and he was like, it doesn't really matter what I pick because I know I'm just going to go to jail anyway. So I was like, what? You're like 14? Aye, but I know that's what's going to happen. Like, my dad's in jail, my big brother's in jail as well. Like, so it wouldn't really matter what qualifications I have because I'm just going to end up in jail too. So it really it was a real burden. And I worked with this boy quite closely over like quite a long period of time. I got to know him quite well, and I worked with like other agencies to find out a bit about what was going on with him, to see if we could help to make his life a little bit better. But that whole time, like that period that I was working with him, like I would pray for him like really often. And I remember this one time in particular, and people who know me well will have heard this story, because I was out for a run and I just couldn't stop crying. But it was about this boy, because I was just praying for him, and I don't even know what I was praying, to be honest. I was just like, I need to show me what I need to do. Like, I need to do something to help here. This can't be what his life is going to be. So a couple of weeks passed, continued to pray, and he arrived at my office door. I'd been sent down for my class. So this was quite a bog standard thing. I was like, right, okay. So I'd been praying, God, give me an opportunity to speak to this boy. And being a teacher is a funny thing. Like, you really can't, you're not supposed to share your political views or your religious views or be seen to influence anyone. So I couldn't just go up to him and say, right, I'm just going to start a conversation about this. So I was like, Lord, show me if there's an opportunity to share, so when he comes. Been sent out of my class to come to you. Like, what have you done? So he told me what had happened, and he's like, but that's not even the problem. The problem is that it's RE, and I absolutely hate RE. So didn't get taught by you, Dave, or Johnny, obviously, they would be loving it. But I absolutely hate it. I said, why do you hate it? He's like, because it's like about religion and God, and like, who even believes in God? So I was like, oh no, this is my chance. So I was like, right. So I was like, well, I believe in God. Do you? Why do you believe in God? So we were able to have a 10-minute conversation. I made him a cup of tea. We sat, we had a bit of a chat. He told me about why he didn't believe in God, and I talked about why I did, and I talked about having a relationship with God, and actually in my life being able to see situations that God had really helped me with. And we ended the conversation, and he was just like, well, I don't believe. And I said, well, do you know what? That's okay just now. I was like, but do you know what? God's waiting. So see, when you change your mind and you want to know God, like, he'll be there and he'll be ready and he'll be ready to listen to you. So it doesn't matter how long it takes you, but he'll be ready and he'll be waiting. And that's kind of how we left the conversation. And then weeks went by, and it's like 10, 12 years ago, and I still think about this boy. I've Googled his name a couple of times to see if I can see like where he is and what's going on with him. And as I was preparing for this, like his wee face just kept coming to my mind, and I thought, I feel like I was obedient in that moment, even though it was a wee bit uncomfortable. And I thought, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm just going to take my chance here. But I also know for a fact that God has a great plan for that boy's life. He's a man now. And I also know that I wouldn't have been the only person that had been burdened for him. And there's something really reassuring in that there will have been people that maybe I don't even know, I probably don't know, that were actually all feeding in and had that same burden. And I think that's quite reflective of what's going on here. I think there was like a lot of burdens placed in a lot of people's hearts, and it made action. And I don't know, sometimes I think I'm just going to bump into him in the supermarket someday and like find out about how he's getting on. But I feel like in that moment, I've done what God was asking me to do, and it was like a really small act of obedience. And it was one of those things where I was like, I've been praying for this, so why do I feel like I'm struggling to do it? But I did push through that, and it's allowed me to open up other conversations a bit more easier with people since that. So I feel like I learned as much from that, going through that process, as maybe he got out of it. So I do want to encourage you that you're part of something bigger, and that you make a contribution. But just like that domino, you might not see the full extent of the impact, but God is calling you to be obedient. So just to sort of recap where we're at, this all started with this burden that was placed in Nehemiah, that he prayed about, and he prayed for a long time. I think Colin told us last week that he'd been praying for months about it, 4 months possibly. But he looked for that opportunity to speak to the king, and then he took action, started to get organised. We heard last week about how he began to accumulate the resources that he needed, and then he got to the walls of Jerusalem and he worked with those people who were there, and he influenced them, and they probably had an impact on him too, but the key was that they all worked together. There was no exceptions. And I've just got a few questions, just as the band head back up, please. Was like, what are you burdened for? What's God placed in your heart? What can you not get out of your head? Or what needs repaired? If we're going back to, is there something you're looking at and you're just thinking, I don't know where to start? Who are you standing with? Who's standing alongside you? Or is God asking you to go and get alongside someone else? Is he saying, go and speak to that person, get alongside them? And who are you influencing around you? Do you know that you're influencing them? And are you influencing them for God? So I just want to end with some encouragement. So God has got great plans for every single one of you. We know that. And I just want to encourage you to be like Nehemiah and be willing to take action. Thank you.